Andrea Waddell here. Welcome to the studio. I'm going to demonstrate today something that I have found very helpful in my own exploration of abstract composition is just working in these small little squares, or it doesn't have to be a square format. It can be whatever you want it to be, and just basically doing lots and lots of these is a way to improve your composition, because it allows you to, first of all, not get hung up on just one and work it and overwork it and work it. You're just doing bunches and bunches and bunches of these until you start to see something that you like unfolding. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to be using a very limited palette of just the primaries. I have a primary yellow, working with a primary magenta, primary blue, titanium white, titanium black, titanium white, zinc white, and a Mars black. And so that has created this palette of basically the primaries mixed together to create an orange, a green, a violet, and adding white to that, adding black to that, adding gray to that gives me a palette that's going to work for what I want it to do. And we're going to jump in and start with any notebook that can handle what medium. You need a pencil and something where you can just create some shapes quickly. So let's go ahead and get started. If you are not already signed up to my newsletter, you might want to go over there and make sure you're signed up to andreawaddell.com/subscribe. I have a new self-paced online workshop that's going to be coming out probably in June, I think in June, and I'm super excited about it. I've been working on it for almost a year now. There's a deep dive into abstract composition with all of the various elements of creating lines that are exciting, shapes, working with textures, developing color. Anyway, that's coming out soon. Head on over to andreawaddell.com/subscribe to make sure you're on my newsletter list. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, go ahead and do that, and let's get started. I'm going to start by using my art business card or art calling card or whatever you want to call it to create some little squares for me, doing 6 of these. You can use anything you want, any size you want. You can use both sides of your journal. In this case, I'm just going to do 6, and I'm going to try to get all of these done in a half an hour so I don't overthink it. I'm using a Lyra, a water-soluble graphite crayon, a set of brushes, any brushes will do. And I'm just going to start by laying down some shapes, jump from one square to the next. Get some freestyle, freehand shapes. I've deliberately not taped the edges of these little squares because I think it's actually a good exercise not to rely on the tape to stop you, to control your edge, but to just keep that under control yourself. I think it trains you in a different way, creating different shapes, different sized shapes, different quality of shapes. There's just so many types of shapes. And when you do this freestyle, freehand, after a while you start to notice your shapes are often really very, very similar. So in this case, since I know that, I'm going to create a jagged edged shape because my shapes don't usually have jagged edges. They're not usually geometric. Sometimes I'm using a fluid matte medium. I like to put the medium in a squeeze bottle. Get these little squeeze bottles on Amazon. It's just easier to work with in the moment. Just laying down color, just grabbing from this palette. It's a pretty rich palette of just primary colors, desaturated with white, with gray, with black. gets a lot. Lots to play with. I'm going to make a shape now and use my shop towel. So I have sort of a diaphanous quality, and I liked it so much, I'm going to do it right immediately again. Tried to use a skewer, but it was already dry. And this is really also an exercise about learning to trust the process. The process being when you are creating a composition without a reference to anything at all, and you're just, letting things emerge and allowing the different colors, layers, shapes, textures, etc. become the composition, you get into that sort of the process, the trusting of the process of, why don't I play for a while, lay down shapes, grab colors, keep it going, and then little by little trusting that I'm going to keep this going until something I like starts to emerge. Something in the colors, something maybe in the negative space, maybe in the layering like I'm doing here. I'm layering a shape on top of a shape, a line on top of a shape. Sort of conscious of looking at some negative space. In this case, it's trying to find some violet, as I know that's going to react well with its complement, that yellow color there. Getting some lines going to create some balance through the different shapes. Putting this blue dot in here, which is going to plague me for the rest of this. That one is going to become trouble down the line. I don't know that yet. Now I'm using this, the brush I'm using is kind of old, kind of crappy, kind of fallen apart. And I like using those kinds of brushes for the quality of the movement you can get when you're using them. The quality of the line, the quality of, what happens when you press down hard, adding pressure. Here I'm trying to add a little value shift, trying to make up a shadow, figure out, I don't know where the shadow is, but why don't I just, pretend that there's a light source coming from the right, hitting that, there's a little shadow there, which is what you're doing with your abstractions is, we are looking for value changes, we are looking for brights and shadows, and we're basically making that up. We're inventing where the light source is, where are the darks? Is it under a shape? Is it on top of a shape? Is there a light within a shape, like I'm doing right here with my beat up brush, pressing down really, really hard? Doing it again. Yeah, I wasn't comfortable with the jagged things, but what I learned from this is the next time I do a jagged shape, I'm going to keep it. I went back to my safe habits of, I prefer organic shapes. I didn't even know what to do with that jagged edge because it's not really in my repertoire. But if you want to push yourself, try new things. Like for me, try that jagged edge, work with it for a while before I cover it up. That's something that I learned from this. Every single time you do any of these exercises, but any painting really, you're constantly learning. It's just astounding. I notice that every single time I paint, every single time, I learn something. I think that's what keeps us all going. It never gets old. It's always exciting. This one is all warm colors, and so I'm going to play with a little temperature change. Add something very light, very cool, and it'll bring those warm colors out more. some yellow there so that I tie those two pieces together, the yellow and that little orangey yellow square. And this one above it, I'm going to start fussing with this now. Here comes fussing. I couldn't get that bottom piece to work. It's very interesting. Even when you're working on these little pieces, like 6 little paintings, when you're working on big canvases, medium-sized canvases, sometimes your paintings come out of the gate, bang. They work the first time around, they're great, they flow, and sometimes you struggle with them a little bit. You always learn from that. And it's true even with these little ones. Some of them you're going to love, some of them are not going to be quite as successful. But it's fun to do this kind of as a timed exercise so you can just see how far you can get in a half an hour. Fussing with that one a little bit more, bringing a skewer in. Trying to fix the edge quality. But I'm very relaxed about it. If I see something that's not working, because I trust the process so much, having done this for so long, I know it'll come together. I'm not sure when, I'm not sure how, I'm not sure with what, but if I keep going and trying, something's going to work. There's also something too about knowing the part of the process to understand is if you're being too fussy and tensing up too much, then it might be time to take a risk. In this case, I was trying to get some light peach and it kept mixing with my blue, but I kept going. Now I've pulled in something that I learned from this exercise that I absolutely loved was a Caran d'Ache water-soluble colored pencil. Added something that I loved the feel of it. It's very fluid, it's very luscious. Made a really great line. This one here is giving me trouble. This one, little Easter egg shaped one. So now I realize, okay, it's time to take a risk. So let's bring in a tool, bring in a catalyst wedge, and risk ruining even the bits that I like to perhaps get something that's just going to be a little bit more exciting, more lively. And I've really kept a lot of negative space open in each of these because that's something that I've been doing lately and might not be something that you want to do. You don't have to. It just happens to be what I'm into doing these days. I'm talking to you about the joys of this pencil. I had to speed this up a little bit because it was a half an hour and I thought that might be a little bit too much for you to have to sit through to learn something from. So this one now, it's like, all right, it's not working. Then it's time to bring in a glazing medium and just start adding a couple of glazes to see what happens with a few glazes. All of this because I got rid of that jagged edge. I got myself into some trouble, and that's fine. I learned from that. I like this quality of acrylic a lot, is when the acrylic is wet and you have an underpainting and then you've put another layer on top. You use a skewer or anything and you dig your lines right into it. I like that line mark making option. You have it with oil too, but it's just a little bit different with acrylic. Now this one's starting to pull itself together. I like its shape. Now that I have this sort of vibrant orange and I've got that juxtaposed with this layered pink kind of shape. I like that. So, that is really the thing to remember, that it is our job as artists to try to create shapes that are pleasing to us first, and then to other people. This one could have been done, but for me, Andrea, I know myself well enough to know that it wasn't done for me. It needed more. I needed more texture, more nuance, more things going on for that to feel like a finished sketch that I might be able to jump from, take into a larger piece, or just push this sketch to as far as I can take it. So I'm just adding layers on top of layers on top of the square. It's sort of like a grid within a grid. Adding some visual texture with my skewer. Getting rid in the end of that little red shape there. Those two shapes, left and right, are the same height. So I'm going to lose that and it'll pull it all together. There we go. So you can see that was quick. That was about a half an hour. And we got a bunch of little things. And yours will be yours. And from each of these, it doesn't mean that you'll necessarily take one of these and make a big painting from it, but you might very well. But you might learn something from each one. Like in this case, I learned I like that pencil. So that's going to for sure find its way into my next piece. I liked, bringing skewers in over wet paint. I know myself well enough to know that a composition that looks like it might be there, but it's just missing a little bit of sophistication or interesting shapes or enough differences going on, I'm going to keep that going. And this one, we'll let it sit for a while and see what I'm going to do with this. So yeah, go ahead and try that and tell me in the comments below how it's going for you. All right, I'll see you next time.